The joke echoed through the bright conference room like harmless laughter, but nobody noticed the quiet change in one man's eyes. They only saw a billionaire CEO smiling confidently after another successful business deal, teasing the calm maintenance contractor who had spent the entire morning repairing the company's aging headquarters. With a playful grin, she looked at him in front of her executives and casually remarked that her little son needed a father like him. Everyone laughed because it sounded like nothing more than a clever joke. But the man didn't laugh. His gentle reply was so honest, so painfully real that every smile disappeared from her face within seconds. In that unexpected silence, hidden wounds, forgotten promises, and broken hearts began rising to the surface, changing every life in the room forever. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Enlightened Story if you believe kindness, second chances, and family can change even the hardest hearts. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. It was a beautiful spring morning filled with clear blue skies and bright daylight pouring through the glass walls of Hawthorne Dynamics, one of the fastest growing technology companies in the country. Employees hurried through spotless hallways carrying laptops and coffee cups while executives prepared for another profitable quarter. At the center of this world stood 40-year-old CEO Margaret Sinclair, admired for her intelligence, feared for her impossible standards, and respected by almost everyone who worked beneath her. She had built her empire through discipline and sacrifice. But behind the expensive suits and polished speeches was a woman who had quietly forgotten how to trust people outside the boardroom. The man repairing the electrical systems that day was 39-year-old Wesley Cole. He wore faded navy work pants, a clean gray work shirt with a stitched company logo, worn leather boots, and simple protective gloves. His short dark brown hair showed the first signs of gray near his temples, while years of outdoor work had left gentle lines around his thoughtful hazel eyes. He never spoke loudly, never sought attention, and always finished every task with care. Few people knew that after losing both his wife and unborn son in a devastating highway accident 8 years earlier, Wesley had quietly devoted himself to helping children through volunteer programs every weekend. Pain had not made him bitter. Somehow, it had made him kinder. While replacing lighting panels near the executive offices, Wesley met 7-year-old Oliver. He had escaped another private tutoring session and wandered through the building carrying colored pencils and a sketchbook almost as large as himself. His short chestnut hair fell neatly over a pale blue sweater, and his curious green eyes examined everything around him with innocent wonder. Unlike most children raised around wealth, Oliver wasn't fascinated by expensive things. He loved drawing birds, planting flowers, and asking endless questions about ordinary people. When Wesley noticed him struggling to reach a paper airplane trapped on top of a bookshelf, he quietly climbed a ladder and handed it back with a warm smile. Instead of treating him like the son of a billionaire, he spoke to him like any other child deserving patience and respect. For the next 15 minutes, while waiting for replacement equipment, he folded paper into birds, tiny boats, and stars, showing him simple tricks that made him laugh louder than anyone had heard in months. Several executives watched the scene with surprise. They had never seen the young boy laugh so naturally inside the building. Later that afternoon, Margaret happened to walk past the hallway just as Oliver hugged Wesley before returning to his classroom upstairs. The sight caught her completely off guard. Her son had become distant after the death of his grandmother the previous year, barely speaking to employees or even smiling during family dinners. Yet this ordinary maintenance worker had accomplished something therapists had struggled to do. During the closing inspection of the repairs, Margaret approached Wesley with several executives standing nearby. She thanked him for his professionalism before glancing toward the elevator where Oliver had disappeared. Wearing the confident smile that usually controlled every room, she casually joked that perhaps her son needed a father exactly like him. Soft laughter spread across the hallway. Wesley lowered his eyes for a moment before answering with quiet respect. He explained that every child deserved a loving father, but what they needed even more was a parent who had enough time to truly see them. Money could build castles, schools, and companies, yet no amount of success could replace sitting beside a frightened child after a nightmare or listening to stories that seemed unimportant to adults. If her son was searching for a father like him, perhaps he was really searching for someone who simply stayed. The laughter vanished instantly. Margaret's smile faded. No executive dared speak. For the first time in years, someone had challenged her without raising his voice. That evening, Margaret returned to her enormous modern home overlooking the city skyline. Every room looked perfect, every surface spotless, every luxury imaginable available within seconds. Yet the silence inside those expensive walls suddenly felt unbearable. While walking past Oliver's bedroom, she noticed dozens of colorful paper birds hanging from the ceiling. Her son had carefully written tiny words beneath each one. Mr. Wesley said birds always find their way home. Margaret stood frozen. She realized she couldn't remember the last bedtime story she had personally read. She couldn't remember the last weekend spent entirely with her son. Business meetings, investor dinners, international flights, quarterly reports. She had convinced herself these sacrifices were temporary. Somehow years had disappeared. The next morning, she canceled 3 meetings for the first time in nearly 6 years. Her assistants stared in disbelief as she instructed them to postpone everything except essential emergencies. Instead of entering another conference room, Margaret drove herself to the community center where Wesley volunteered every Saturday. She expected to find him teaching woodworking or repairing playground equipment. Instead, she found something that humbled her completely. Wesley sat beneath a large maple tree surrounded by children from foster homes, reading stories while several elderly volunteers prepared lunch nearby. Every child listened with complete attention because Wesley treated each page as though it contained priceless treasure. When one little boy became frightened by a thunderstorm beginning in the distance, Wesley quietly placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder without interrupting the story. There were no cameras, no reporters, no wealthy donors, no audience, only kindness. Margaret remained unnoticed for almost an hour. Watching silently from a distance, she realized genuine character revealed itself when nobody important was watching. As weeks passed, she found small reasons to visit the community center again and again. Sometimes she delivered supplies anonymously. Other times she brought Oliver, who immediately joined the other children planting flowers or painting wooden birdhouses beside Wesley. For the first time since becoming CEO, Margaret started leaving work before sunset several evenings each week. Investors complained. Some executives questioned her priorities. But something far more valuable than profit had begun growing inside her family. One afternoon, Oliver proudly showed his mother a drawing. It showed three figures standing beneath a bright blue sky. One was himself. One was Margaret. The third wasn't Wesley. It was simply labeled someone who stays. The word struck Margaret harder than any business failure ever could. She finally understood her son's heart had never been asking for perfection, only presence. Months later, Hawthorne Dynamics organized its annual employee appreciation celebration in a beautiful public park under clear daytime skies. Families filled the open lawns while children played games and musicians performed cheerful songs. During her closing speech, Margaret surprised everyone by announcing several new company policies: paid family days, flexible schedules, expanded parental leave, volunteer programs supporting foster children, mental health resources. She admitted that success meant very little if employees had to sacrifice the people waiting for them at home. Many workers wiped tears from their eyes. They had never expected those words from the woman once known as the ICE CEO. After the applause faded, Margaret found Wesley quietly helping employees clean tables instead of celebrating. She thanked him sincerely, not for changing her company, but for changing her life. Wesley gently reminded her that people rarely changed because someone gave them advice. They changed because love reminded them what truly mattered. The word stayed with her forever. Years later, Hawthorne Dynamics became famous not only for innovation, but for being one of the happiest workplaces in the country. Employee turnover dropped dramatically, families grew stronger, and thousands of volunteer hours transformed neighborhoods across the city. Oliver grew into a compassionate young man who often led charity events himself. He never forgot the stranger who had folded paper birds during an ordinary workday and unknowingly repaired something far more broken than electrical wiring. He had repaired a family. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Enlightened Story. Every interaction helps these meaningful stories reach someone who may need hope today. Special request, please comment below with family comes first. If you believe love is measured not by wealth or success, but by the time we choose to spend with the people who need us most. As the sun shone brightly across the park that afternoon, colorful paper birds floated gently from children's hands into the clear blue sky, reminding everyone that the strongest families are not built by perfect people, but by ordinary hearts willing to stay, forgive, and choose one another every single day. And sometimes the most life-changing sentence is not the joke that makes everyone laugh, but the quiet truth that makes everyone finally listen.